It only leads to trouble and seat wetting. It's Elfmania on Amigos, everything Amiga.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
Today, Aaron, we're talking about Elfmania, brother.
Yeah.
You know, Aaron, the one, the magazine, the one. This is a quote from the back of the box on Elfmania. Yeah. It said, pants wetting excitement. That's how they described Elfmania. So my question for you, Aaron, is have you ever been playing a video game and you just got so immersed in the action that you look down in a puddle of your own filth?
Well, listen, no is the short answer, but with a but. And the but is, back in my, and I don't know, you never really got into the massively multiplayer online role-playing games. No. But back in the day when I was playing EQ, they'd have these things that you'd have to do, which is called, you had to basically park your guy beside him and camp them. It was called camping. And you'd be camping to wait for someone to pop. All right? That means somebody to show up. Pop. That means you're looking for the NPC to show up so you could kill him and take his rare item. Okay?
Oh, okay.
And multiple people would camp. Like one guy. Like I remember there was this guy in its maze. I would camp him. Another guy was this hermit. I would camp all the time because you'd take what he had and it would be valuable. You could keep it or you could sell it. You needed money.
So these were things that you wouldn't normally kill, and like not like a monster. This was an NPC you were just so overpowered that you could have your way with him.
No, these are monsters, and sometimes you would lose. But you had to have. But they weren't always around, and they were rare, right? And so, long story short, I definitely remember a few times of camping where this could take literally all day. Okay, because EQ didn't care about your time, and so I would have the computer on and have my guy parked somewhere, and I would look at the clock and be like, okay, this is a 5 hour. It's a 5 hour camp. He'll be back. So but you never knew exactly when he'd been killed or whatever. Sometimes you could get close, and I remember one time waiting for this guy, and I had to use the bathroom so bad it was killing me. And I actually thought about coming up with like the old trucker's helper.
Oh, yeah.
To try to come up with a way to get through this without getting up. And I absolutely have heard stories of gamers that wet the chair or worse. Especially Twitch streamers. I'd say that happens every day, brother. So now, that's as close as I've ever came to having an accident like that. What about you?
When you were, I don't think so.
That's good.
I don't think that. I don't. Usually, as you know from me doing this show with you, when nature calls, I usually don't hesitate to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I'm playing a video game, I want to be playing in comfort. And so, like, if I even get a little tickle in the nether regions, I'm heading to the bathroom. And
that's why we travel so well together.
Right.
I stop at because I'm on the road a lot. Every bathroom we go to, whether I have to go or not, I go. I never don't tempt fate. Because the last thing you want to do is be in the car and think to yourself, man, I wish I went to the bathroom at that last spot. Now I'm hosed.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So, but there's this whole concept also of like, just being so excited by something. Because, that's the claim on the back of the box is it's pants wetting excitement. Now, I've been in situations where I've been laughing so hard, a little bit might have come out, but I've never been so excited by anything, especially not a video game, that I had a little accident. How about, is that something that's happened to you before? First of all, have you ever been laughing so hard that you've had a little accident?
No, but I'll get a good chuckle, but no. And usually because of what we just talked about, I try not to carry around extra tonnage.
It's a good plan.
But secondly, I think if that happens, you probably are fooling yourself, and it's time to get one of those Depends or something.
There may be other factors in play, is what you're saying.
It's funny when you talk about, like, we're mocking this sort of, and it is funny, but like there are certain professions where you're going to pee and poo your britches.
Absolutely. Astronaut.
Well, I'm thinking
cross-country
more
flyer.
like NASCAR guys. and
Yeah,
stuff.
NASCAR
I've heard
guys.
these guys.
Yeah.
It's funny to think that the heroes that jump out of these cars or whatever are and that's another one. I've heard astronauts that don't want to meet people or after they come down because they know that they got extra baggage in the old
That's
truck
what happened
there.
that's what happened with Amelia Earhart when she got back from one of her famous flights.
I read that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's not a crime, but no, and I can tell you right now, without a doubt, if one game could make me like unpee myself, it would be Elfmania. Like it actually drives it back up.
Let's get into it, man.
That's possible. It's one of the many love themes from this particular game. Bo, is this one that you had tried out in the past?
You know, I want to say that we've had to have played this on an Amigathon before. We just had to have. I didn't have any strong memories of it, but it's possible that we fired this up together before.
Well, I had strong memories of it. Very strong. Because I knew exactly what we were getting into when this popped up. I was baffled that we had never played this before. I'm stunned that this never came up. But by God, we're going to deal with it right now. It's Elfmania, brother. This came out in the year of our Lord, 1994. Dark year, indeed. This is published by Renegade. The news is up, the jig is up. Remember that song? They finally found me.
Is that on Gene Simmons' solo album?
No, that Styx. Renegade. They played it at every Steelers game. That's my version. Renegade. It's funny. Renegade. If you look at the stuff they published, like almost everything they published was pretty darn great. The Chaos Engines, Fire and Ice, Flight of the African Queen, Rough and Tumble, Gods, Sensible Soccers, Vira Cop, Iridium 2. They did this Speedball 2 for the CD32. So, like, there's not a dud amongst them. Well,
this is the exception that proves the rule, is what you're saying.
Telemark was like, hold our finished beer because we're going to unleash this sucker on the masses. Just a little bit on, we've never covered Telemark. There's a reason. This is a game that they actually released on the Amiga. They had another sort of a detective game they were working on. They were close, but it never got released. So get this. I did a little research because I was like, I never heard of these guys. Telemark are one of Finland's first developers. Finland.
Really?
Along with Bloodhouse. Great. Another one. I think we actually covered some stuff from Bloodhouse because Bloodhouse did Stardust. If you'll recall Stardust.
Yeah.
These two outfits, they merged into another company, and that company is still around, if you can believe it. In fact, they're getting ready to start making stuff for PS5. So their parent company is still around. This was coded by, and I'm going to butcher some Finnish names here, as I want to do, Aneti Tovajainen and Jane Askolan. Both these fellows never did anything else on the Amiga. The graphics were by Aneti as well, and the music on this was Alexei Eben, who did work on a game based on what I'm sure will be one of my future novels, Smarty and the Nasty Gluttons.
We played that game.
And then I don't remember playing it, but the name's good.
We did an Amigos on it. I thought it was a Swedish game, but I guess it's Finnish.
Nope. And then the other musician is Vili Jovanen something. Who knows? Sorry, everybody. This amazingly, I will say this. This is an OCS ECS joint, a 2-discer, and sold originally for £25, 95p, 25 pounds on this one. And
price.
When it came out. Yeah, that's pretty much normal. So where to begin, Bo? I'm going to lead the dance, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
This, I know you've got strong feelings on this, and so do I. But I'm going to lead this. I'm just going to read down. This is a list. So this game came out in '94. Okay, and I'm going to preface the things I say. Just think about this in your mind. I know you're not a big fighting game aficionado, but you thought you know the score. You know how they work.
Yeah.
In 94, these games were released onto the world. Okay? Battle Arena Toshinden, Darkstalkers, Fighters History Dynamite, Samurai Showdown 2, Killer Instinct, Primal Rage, Tekken, Virtual Fighter 2, X-Men, Children of the Atom. This was a great year for fighting games. It's an all-time great year, and you'll notice a lot of those were sequels that have had games that like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Virtual Fighter 2, Fighters History's Dynamite. These were games that already had a game come out several years before it. Okay, I want to put all this in the preference. So 1994 was a great year for fighting games, except for one game. And we're going to talk about it today because despite what you may have heard about this particular game, as a fighting game, it's trash. It's utter trash. And I've got about, 40 points here of things that I hated in this game. But before we get into things I hate, Boat, I thought you might want, I don't know if you looked into the incredible lore of this game.
I did. I read of the lore. I opened the scrolls.
Yeah.
The lore is incredibly confusing. It's needlessly complicated.
The lore is odd. Do you want to go through it? I've got it here if you don't.
So there's, I'll give you what I recollect from my memories. So there's a king of the Elven Kingdom, and I believe the Elven Kingdom is called Mulala. Okay,
it's Mulandai. Mulandia. Mulandia. That's it.
Mulandia.
Yeah.
And okay.
Mulala's better. I will say that's better, Boat.
And there's as in all these sorts of games, there's a championship, and the winner of the championship gets to reign over Mullandia. But there's also this thing called the Dragon Fan? There's a secondary item at play because they're like, that's the main goal, but there's also this other thing that's pretty cool too. Yeah. And so that is also involved in some way. But what makes the lore of this game interesting is that you do not play as one of the characters in this game. You're essentially a financier, like the Merchant of Venice. Yeah. And your job is to bankroll fighters while the current king is bankrolling his fighters to decide the champion of the world. So it's a different sort of fighting game.
You're close on most of that. There were a couple points.
Okay, like I said, I was just going off memory.
So the king. So in this land, this stupid land, think about this as your land of Mullandia. So it's written in like the fabric of the land, like it's in their constitution that the way you decide who's going to be king is the first guy that could go and kick the crap out of the king. Okay, that's the rule.
Isn't that how all monarchies work?
So the king's in on it. Now, get this though. So the Dragon Fan, what that does, it gives you all the secrets of the universe. It's sort of like when remember at the end of Highlander. He knew all. He was all. This is sort of like the Highlander.
I've never seen Highlander.
Oh, geez, you need to go see that. Anyway, so this is like the Elven equivalent. And so what you got to do is, you're right about the financier part, which we'll get into that. But you have to get 6 wins straight across the country, and we'll explain that too. And then after you do that, you can claim the crown, and then you'll get access to the fan. The Dragon Fan. But the king he's not just gonna like lay down. This guy's not gonna job himself out. He's all man. So he's gonna fight you along with his geeks. So the backstory is important in one way, which explains this very odd gimmick that this game has. And I don't know, did you get a full grasp of what was happening in this game in terms of, I mean, you seemed like you did. You have the financier of the fighters and whatnot, the map, and how many victories you needed.
I understand on a conceptual level what you have to do, but playing the game, the knowledge that I gained from reading the manual did not translate to what I saw in the game.
So I'm going to give you the cliff notes. And again, I'm sure you picked up some of this, but this is just for everyone's edification, all right? You start this game, and like Boat said, you're not really the player in this. You're hiring basically guys to go and fight these battles. All right, you start with 75 coins, all right? And when you start this game, we should talk about how this comes up. So when the game comes up, it plays a theme, it flashes through some credits, there's an attract mode. But the second you hit the button, you're in the game. Is there some way to change the difficulty? Screw you, is the answer the game says. Is there a way to have a team mode, practice modes? No, there's none of that. You get nothing. I mean, you literally have 0 options. You can't turn off the music. You can't do jack squat. You got nothing. You can't do anything.
Are there alternate control schemes?
No, you get. What did I just say? Screw you. That's what the game says to you, Bo. The game hates you. Okay, so you don't get any of that. Now, the alternate control schemes, there's only one button. And by the way, there's no 2-button support. Screw you, Amiga community. You get nothing.
Even though this is 1994?
Right, exactly. So you get 75 coins at the start of this game, and you get to pick one of 3 geeks, okay? And I'll get into the geeks later, but just trust me when I tell you. And once you pick a geek, you then get to use that particular guy to fight your next battle. So most fighting games, you pick a fighter out of a big grid of guys, and then you fight him, right? But not in this game. In this game, there's a big, bizarre map, okay? Mm-hmm. The map is laid out into a grid pattern.
It's like Defender of the Crown.
But you can't see the grid pattern because the game hates you. But it's a 6x6 grid, okay? Big grid. And you move your cursor around to these different areas. Now, some areas you put your cursor on, it'll say, you're going to fight me next. I have a picture. Sometimes it's a question mark. Sometimes it's just nothing. But when you click on it, you're going to fight whatever sucker is in that grid, okay? And you're going to fight him with the sucker you selected at the beginning of the game, okay? That's a done deal. So when you start out the game, you only have access, you could only afford 3 people, okay? And they're all elves. Or I guess everyone in this game technically is an elf. The 3 people you could afford are Janica, the pirate elf, who's the hot chick of the game. I'm being very courteous here. She's a pirate. She does, we'll get to her moves. You can also pick Taki, the ice elf. Taki looks like Ric Flair of elves. He's got this big boa-looking thing. He's got blonde hair and a dumb look.
It keeps him warm. It keeps him warm in the ice. The boa.
And then the third guy is like your Mr. T of elves. It's Tenko, the forest elf, who also everyone in this game looks dumb. Like, I mean, I don't mean like they're not well drawn. I mean, they look. Am I wrong, Bo? Stop me when you hear it. Well, when you hear me lie.
I mean, what you think of as dumb, some other people may think of as elf-like.
What did you think of them?
Dumb.
Okay, I know what an elf looks like. These people.
Can you draw an elf that doesn't look dumb?
Here's the way I look at it. I think someone in Finland saw some anime and was like, "Hey, I could pull that off." They can't. They can't do it.
It did put some Japanese on the box, though, to try and fool you into thinking this came from the Far East.
That's another game that did that. It's not the first. So, and every one of the elves that you pick at the beginning, they all have this look on their face like they're posing at Sears or like they're trying. I mean, what are they? This is life. This is a serious tournament, you idiots. So once you pick one of these 3 dullards to fight with, and then you click that spot on the map, you're going to be matched up with somebody. And then you go and fight them. So when you fight, so this is where the nitty gritty goes. Every time, so once you get into a fight, it's sort of like a normal fighting game in terms of like there's health bar at the top and the score, the stuff you would expect. When you fight someone, every time that they hit you, money falls out of you. Okay, it's like you. I don't know. In this land, you tape the money to your flesh before you go into battle. It's protection. You know what I mean? I think there's precedent for that. So every time you whack a sucker, money flies out like a slot machine. But the problem is, if you're getting hit, that means you're losing money, right? But when you hit the other guy, it's a tradition, he's also raining money down. So you want to lose as little money as you can while you're gaining more money by beating the crap out of this guy. So it's important that you do the most damage. Also, and this is a weird one, if money's flying through the screen and you hit it, it will fly across and hurt your opponent.
Yes.
So money is like you can use the money to actually hurt and attack your opponent. Which is odd. And then, so anyway, once the round's over, and hopefully you win, you will get a bonus based on how much damage you did and how much damage you took, and it will all run down. But when you finish your opponent off, not only is the guy carrying a bunch of money, but he's also taped to his skin all of his worldly belongings.
Lots
lamps,
of treasure.
Treasure chests, they all fly out of him. Now, you can't just bend over and pick them up. That's for suckers. You've got to violently attack them before they hit the ground. This is part of the game, and you'll get more money based on how much stuff that you can hit that falls out of your opponent. And then after that happens, you go back to the map screen, and if you've made enough money, the selection of fighters you have will go up. Okay? That's how that works. And you're going to need to pay for better fighters to beat the stiffer competition that you'll face as you cross this map on your way to getting 6 fights in a row across the map to win the kingdom. Does that make any sense? Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah.
So before we'll talk about the controls and the graphics in a minute, but what do you think about that as a concept?
As a concept, it's not the worst, because by 1994, the world had seen a lot of concepts in fighting games. So I can appreciate the desire to want to do something different. I think that the whole 6 across the board thing is an interesting gimmick. I think that it could have been shown more easily or better, in a better way. But
could you show it in a worse way is the better question.
There's no way it could have been shown in a worse way.
No.
I like the idea of a currency that is collectible throughout the game, but can also be used as a weapon. It's weird. It's wacky. This is a wacky game. This is a game starring fighting elves. So I want to see some wacky in here.
Well, you're in the right building for that.
On the whole, aside from the sort of dumb nature of the dragon fan, like, if you can know the secrets of the universe, why would you just not want the fan, and then you go off and you can enjoy your life? You don't have to reign over the kingdom. It's
funny you should mention that, because that's mentioned in the documentation.
Oh, okay.
You see, when the king finally gets beat, then he can sort of, the weight of running the kingdom is lifted off of him, and he can go, with all the knowledge he's earned, and he could go wander around like Qui-Chain Kane with like all this infinite knowledge, and he'll have time to mentally ponder it without worrying about the king.
So the king keeps the fan regardless.
No, once you look at the fan, I think you're golden. Like, you have to look at it.
So the king's already looked at the fan, so he doesn't need to have the fan anymore.
Listen, the king has fanned himself quite a bit with this thing. He's good to go. He knows a lot of the hidden secrets.
So, I mean, if you just read the documentation, and this is a thing, we're far from finishing this review.
No.
But if you somehow got your hands on the documentation, or if you read some of the reviews, I read a bunch of reviews on this game.
Yeah.
And you saw the screenshots, you read the backstory, you saw the sort of new mechanics, you can buy, you can collect money during the fight, which you can use to buy more powerful fighters. All that sounds good.
Yeah.
All that sounds good. So far, I am still on board.
Right. I mean, you're right. It's a cunning ruse. That's one thing the Fan of Dragons teaches, how to be a number one shill. And clearly it's working out. So let's get to, so we've talked about the general concept of how the game goes. Let's talk about the look of the game. This game will work on pretty much any Amiga. It'll work on a 500, 1200. It'll work. It doesn't require, it's OCS, ECS. And so with that in mind, Bo, what do you think of these graphics?
This is a 1-disc game too, I believe.
2 discs.
2 discs. Okay. 2-disc game. This is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I always talk about how Rough and Tumble, which is also a Renegade game, has some of the best looking graphics on the Amiga. I think this game bests it. This game does it all. It's got what appears to be zillions of colors. It's got your famous Amiga gradient background. It's got parallax scrolling. It's got multiple parallax scrolling things. It's got animated backgrounds. You have a cast of characters that are all varied and different that are also colored pretty well. This is stunning. Stunning is the way I would describe the look of this game. And again, it just makes you realize how much of a failure and how much of a disappointment AGA was.
There it is. I was waiting. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. That the backgrounds in this are tippity top. When they say like we've heard a smooth parallax, multi-planar scrolling. This is in the Shadow of the Beast levels of impressive with the way that the game scrolls.
This is how impressive. I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. This is how impressive this game is. If you take away the main character sprites, and you just had the background moving around, this could have been a original Street Fighter 2 quality background.
It's a little more static than that, but not much. I mean, yeah, I know where you're going. You're right, but of course you'd have to take those characters out.
Yeah,
we'll get to them. But in terms of the quality, I mean, there's not a ton of stages. I think there's just a stage for each character, and that's it. But they look quality. They're strikingly good. It's definitely something this has over other fighting games on the Amiga. Even some of my favorites. This has the quality of the parallax scrolling on the ground. And they've also got levels where like you're fighting on something that's floating and you get that kind of bounce. It's got stuff that sets in front of the characters, so you've got that depth. I mean, trust me when I tell you, the stuff that sets in front of the characters, it's not the best, but it's there and it looks pretty good. You know, it's got sound and music, which again, it's sort of I'm going to say it for the 100th time. If this game can pull off these graphics, this is just like Lionheart. If it could pull this off and have sound and music, there's no excuse for anyone else.
On two discs. Yeah. So, all your excuses, everybody that's ever talked to me ever, are worthless. Your excuses are worthless.
It just didn't know how to do it. I'll accept that. But I mean,
it's a lack of programming skill.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
There you go. Now, I want to talk about the look of the characters in this. Now, I mentioned you get 6 characters. We talked about 3 of them. Let's talk about, and I will say, the 3 characters that you get at the start of the game are the crappiest looking 3, in my opinion. In fact, I don't like to throw the word amateurish around, but I can't stand the way that they look. I hate it. Like, you couldn't release this and feel good about yourself. I mean, I know it's a style choice, but I hate it. Okay, I hate the style choice. The way the chick walks around, it looks like she needs to head to the trucker's helper, like, quick. She wears high heel shoes. She says crap that's not elf-like at all. Let's rock. And she plays air guitar. Like, what is that? Like,
in Finland, that's what elves do.
That's not what they do. She comes on and she acts like, listen, I'm not going to say I don't like her. I hate her the most. She's the worst. The elf, Ice Elf, the other guy, they both look like dorks. Yeah, they're geeks. The other 3 characters that you could purchase Seven, the Guardian. Seven is a turban-headed warrior. He's the King's Guard. He's got a big scimitar. All right, that's what he's got. He was my favorite guy, okay? He's got a goatee. He looks sort of like a guy from, like, you'd see, like, in Body Blows or something. Like, a tolerable character. Then you got Koskin the Executioner. He's a big, like, I guess he's Asian sumo. I guess. Like, he's some kind of Japanese elf. Sumo.
Well, I mean, I don't think he looks particularly Japanese. I think it's almost like, since this is a Finnish game, I think maybe they're like whatever the native people of Finland mixed with a sumo wrestler. That's what it reminds me of.
The only reason I say that is because I'm looking at a picture of him, like a still shot, like it's blown up of his face, and he sort of, kind of looks like he might be Asian. But I mean, who knows? Doesn't matter. And then you've also got Matiki the Fat King. That's the king. He's got a crown. He's got a cape. He looks pretty cool, and he carries around a sledgehammer. All right, that's his weapon. So those are your other. So of the 3, the guys you have to purchase look way better and more. They look a little more refined than the dorks that you're stuck with at the start of the game. So, but I mean, the characters don't look as good as the background. They look, sometimes they'll get to the point where they look pretty good, but then, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think I hate the character design in general as much as you do. They look goofy and dumb, but I'm willing to give their feyness a pass because a lot of times elves just look dumb. Let's be honest.
Well, I mean, yeah. So now we're going to talk about the controls. Okay. So this game touts its control system because it doesn't have any of those stupid, hard to memorize specials. That's for suckers. And it says that in the manual. But what they do have in this are each character has sort of like a move he can do that's like a quicker multi version of a normal move. But we'll get to those. So, of course, this is a one-button game. Now, I'm not going to fault the guys for making this one button only, because if you're going to make a game that you can play on any Amiga, the downside of it is you've got to make it so you can play it with one button. That's just the way it is. They got to make money. So, I mean, they have introduced an option for two buttons. They could have, but they didn't. Okay, so there you go. So this game, and we've played plenty of great games that you can play with one button, like fighting games. Panzer Kickboxing comes to mind. So in this game, to do moves, you hold the button and then you point in the diagonals, up, down, or straight, left, and right, and you'll do maneuvers. Okay.
Is it Lionheart controls?
Well, no, it's not. It's not like Lionheart.
It's exactly Lionheart controls.
Well, no, but there's. Well, I mean, that can be confusing, but basically, it's you hold the button and push in a direction, except for you don't push down, because in this game, if you push the joystick down and the button, that's when you block. Okay, this is not a good system. I can tell you that right now for blocking. Blocking in this is real hard to understand, to say the least. All the characters basically do some sort of maneuver. Like, for example, every character has some sort of sweep or low kick. Every character has some sort of mid-range, like middle of the body punch or kick. The chick does a headbutt, which is don't get me started. And then they all have moves where they'll do.
It's really not really a hit. It's like she's using her hair as a flail.
Yep. Well, whatever she's doing, it looks dumb, borderline perverse. And then you also will have like lunging thrusts, lunging kicks. If you're using a guy with a weapon, they'll use that as their extensive like kick and punch. But basically, they're all mapped the same. So there's no Street Fighter type moves where you spin the joystick in a direction and do that move. Okay, every move is just like we told you. Okay, to do the special move, one of your person's moves will have like a special mode. And the way you get it to go off is you just do the move, you spam the move over and over, and then eventually it just starts. Okay? For example, the chick, if you spam this like side kick, or I guess it's more like a roundhouse kick, if you do like 4 or 5 in a row, she'll go, blah, 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 she'll freak out and go across the screen and go, let's rock! And the problem with this is you have to be in a coma to not see this coming. And the computer, you can get it off with them once, and then it never works again. I've got a rundown of what I didn't like about this, but I want to hear from you, Bo. Your thoughts on the controls.
If you have a one-button control system, you are limited to your options. So what most games do is they make the one button sort of a context button. So depending on where you are in relation to your opponent is whether you're going to do a punch or a kick, or sometimes they'll do the length of the press, things like that. I think in the case of Elfmania, they were really trying hard to make a control system with one button be more precise. And the only way that you can do that is if you introduce Lionheart controls, where you hold down the button in the direction, because essentially what that does is instead of one button, now you have 8 buttons, because actually 7 buttons, because down doesn't work, but so you essentially have a 7-button controller when you do that. I did not think the controls were that bad. I had to keep reminding myself, I'm like, this is just like Lionheart. I just got to put myself in that mindset. And so I didn't have trouble. Like you said, the special move is a problem because it's difficult to get that off. If you're playing against another player, you're never going to get it off because they're going to see you rapidly yanking on your stick to try and get this thing to go off. They're about, oh, you're doing that thing, huh? And so that's poorly implemented. But every other move in the game, I was able to execute all of the moves for every character right off the bat. So I am, you came here to bury this game. I'm here to praise this game.
Oh, yeah? Well, we've come to the portion of the show I like to call the 23 sins. If you'll allow me, I'm going to, at Rocket Fire, I'm going to run through all the things I found and I wrote down while playing this game, all right? And you jump in if you hear something you want to comment on, all right? Because I'm going to bust through these quick. Number one, I mentioned it, no options, no difficulty levels, no practice things, nothing. Number two, when these people have a little, before the fight, they'll say something to each other, right? Mm-hmm. These people say the stupidest crap I've ever seen written. It's so stupid. It's horrible. That's horrible. The coin kicking is stupid. The main announcer sounds like a lemming took a bunch of helium. Like
he's Elvin.
It's
out of the forest.
It's amateurish. The music is okay, but it's like every one of these stages, no matter if you're on a pirate ship, if you're in a dungeon, you're in a disco, brother, and you're getting down and funky.
It's Elfland.
No, listen, I'm never going there, and you shouldn't either. And next, 6 fighters isn't great. That's not good, start off, but 3 fighters out of the gate, that sucks. No real special moves, and the moves they give you suck. The special moves that you sort of get suck. The coin collection element, it sucks for fighting games. They tried to work a gimmick that's no good. I didn't like it. Plus, when you get into the game, when you fight like King or the Sumo, their hit bar goes on forever, and you can't hurt them unless you have tons and tons and tons of power. Coins add to your health, so you've got to go after them with like tons of coins, which means you've got to sit around and skirt out with a bunch of geeks just to get to the point where you fight these guys. And then the fights take like an hour because you can't really hurt each other because all your moves suck. So that part of the game, if you get long enough into it, it sucks. The bonus stage sucks. It's like, remember how fun it was to beat up the car? Not in this. You just beat up treasure chests and vases and you kick coins. I don't know what this game has about kicking currency, but it sucks. I hated the bonus round. When you get dizzied, you can get dizzied off one shot. It never makes any sense, and you can't move once the other guy's dizzied. You just sit there and look at him. I don't know what's the point of that. There's no jumping animation frames at all. So when a guy just goes up in the air, they float up in the air like they're on the moon, and they don't, like they're statues on the moon that have been thrown upwards.
Yeah.
They don't flip. And when you do a move in the air, it's exactly the way it looks on the ground, except you have it to be hovering slowly. This makes the jumping in Virtua Fighter look like Donkey Kong's jump. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's inexcusable. This isn't even a 3D game. My God, why do you have to have the guys float so much? So that was horrible. It takes forever to start the game over. It takes forever for you to get back there. Why? Because after you've been defeated, as if to kick you in the crotch further, you've got to sit back while the computer collects all the bonus coins that fall out of you. That's stupid. Why do I care what that guy's doing? As I mentioned earlier, the characters are triple generic and look amateurish. Some of their moves are horrible. They have no range. The little punches, the little freaking like low kicks are horrible. Some of the characters have moves that are completely worthless. The map selection sucks. Like I mentioned, it's crazy. You can't tell what's happening. It makes no sense. There's the hitting of an opponent. There's no impact. It barely makes a noise. There's nothing to tell you. Sometimes I'd be pummeling a guy and I'd be losing. Sometimes I'd have a punch out and the guy would just he'd be through the punch of the sword and he'd be pummeling me. What's happening? Don't know. Let me see if there's anything else I need to talk about. Oh, the stuff the characters say in the game, and I mentioned this with the chick, it's stupid and they sound stupid. Like when you play a fighting game, I don't want to play a fighting game with a bunch of dorks and nerds. That's what these guys sound like. They say stuff that's not related to the fantasy world. You can't have these guys be elves in a fantasy land. I mean, this chick's wearing Daisy Dukes and high heels, for God's sakes. What fantasy land is this? Maybe she's on her way to the disco.
I know a couple guys whose fantasy land that coincides with.
So the look, I mentioned this earlier, but I want to reiterate it. Not only do the characters look doe-eyed and goofy, but when they're in profile, they're real creepy looking. They don't blink. They got these, like Annabella Combat, they just stand there. no matter what's happening, they got a smile on their face. They got these big bug eyes. They look like freaks. Lastly, and I'll end with this game has no real endings. They pitched this thing with the dragon fan. They pitched this thing with the, you're going to be rolling the kingdom, all this crap. At the end of the game, it just shows the logo and a bunch of words on it, and then that's it. No individual. You only got 6 guys, for God's sake. You could make up some different, you could just put different words or something. It did nothing. So the ending's lame. You don't get to hold the fan. It doesn't show your character celebrate. It's got nothing. It's garbage. Straight garbage. Okay, I'm done. Any comments on any of that?
Well, a lot of what you say is true. Okay, the especially things about the ending. You know, the things about the animation of the characters leaves a ton to be desired. For as great as the background animation is, it's like they spent 99% of their time crafting the perfect backgrounds, and then they're like, oh yeah, we need to put some characters in this fighting game. Because like you said, not having a jumping animation or any actual aerial moves is horrible. It's a horrible thing to leave out in a fighting game. Another thing too, the idle animations for the characters, dumb, real dumb. They're played at about Mach 5. And so they're going back and forth. In Mortal Kombat, their idle animations make them look awesome. This is the opposite of that. It's not good. It's not good. I agree with you about, especially, and maybe it's just because I played the female character the most, because I figured out her special move first. But the whole, rock me baby, you get real tired of that real fast.
She looks like someone I'd see down at the detention center. It's what she reminds me of one of these girls out in the honky tonk. She's got the high heels, the Daisy Dukes. She's playing air guitar. That's a crappy elf boot.
Yeah. However, on the other side of the coin, I would rather play this game than Body Blows. I would, because I feel like I am in more control of my character, and I can control the action on the screen better than I can in Body Blows or Street Fighter 2.
Well, I mean, that's low praise. I mean, you're not. I have to sit here and think about that, because I will say Body Blows had way better characters. Like, the characters looked better and were better. They weren't lame, and you got more of them. But the game, Body Blows, is so slow. It's so incredibly slow, and the graphics in the background aren't in the same stratosphere as this. So I guess I'd like to have the speed and the backgrounds of this, and then the Body Blows people, like, shoehorned in.
And I think that's sort of, as we come around to the section where we talk about the delusional magazine reviews, where they hail this thing as the second coming. Yes. It all depends on the context. In the context of fighting games on the Amiga, this still is not worth losing your mind over. But if you are in the market for a new fighting game and it's 1994 and you have some choices in front of you, Elfmania might not be your last choice.
Well, you're right. That I will give you. It would not be my last choice, because it's better. It's way better than, say, Street Fighter 2, for example. That game sucked. Say what you will about this one, because it stinks. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, this one moves way better. It's prettier. But yeah, there are plenty. No, you're right. There are plenty of Amiga fighting games worse than this, which is it's an atrocity. And I will say this: as I went through my 23 sins of this game, I judged this. I gave this game a courtesy. Okay, and the courtesy was I treated it like a real fighting game. It's a courtesy I very rarely extend to a game on the Amiga that's a fighting game. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I do the same thing with platformers.
I gave this, yeah, exactly. I gave this the benefit of pretending like it's a real fighting game, and was I harsh on it? Yeah, because I thought it sucked. But it does have all the base elements of a fighting game. I watched this show called The Worst Fighting Game in History. It's this guy hosts. And the current fighting game at the top of the list on that show is Pit Fighter on the SNES. Okay?
Okay.
Keep in mind, this guy's played he's played a bunch of Amiga games on there. And this game hasn't been played. And this one right here, I think, is I mean, if you judge it along the lines of other fighting games, it's every bit as bad as the games on those lists. Like, it could easily fit right in there. And you're right. I will say and I knew I'm going to leave this section entirely to you because I know you're ready for it. But when I looked at the scores that this, you want me to read these out before you dig in, or do you have a shtick ready? Because I've got the scores here.
Go ahead and read them out, man. Do it.
Okay, because we got to get into this, and I know I'm glad that I knew you were going to jump in. So, of course, according to Lemon, this game gets a 6.41, which that I could tolerate. The lore score over at Hololight is 70%. However, the contemporary magazines today.
And it's mostly the British magazines.
Right. So these are, and I want to say one more thing before we get into these. This game had been covered in some of these magazines. You may have read this, Boat, and this thing missed its Christmas release. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this game had been demoed by at least one of the magazines who had written up all the things they didn't like about the game in hopes that they would fix them. Okay. So with all that said, I'm just going to run down these scores. Amiga Action gave this an 85. Amiga Computing gave it a 65. Amiga Format gave this a 92. Amiga freaking Joker gave this an 85, which is that's a 200% in Germany.
Right.
Amiga Magazine gave this a 10 out of 10. Perfect score. Amiga Power gave it a 61. They're the ones I mentioned that had played the demo. CU Amiga, 93. The One, 91. The average magazine rating, the contemporary magazine ratings of the time, give this an 83%. Take it away, Boat.
Yeah, and we, I went through these because I was like, well, what do they see in here? And what they're seeing is a format that's rapidly dying, that's looking for any sort of, grasping at anything that will continue to help them remain relevant so all these reviewers can stay in a job. That's what essentially it is. Because all of the things that they're talking about are things that would be non-starters in most other games. Like, every review mentions that it's only 2 discs. Now, I realize that compared to Street Fighter 2, that's great. Compared to Street Fighter 2, this game is a masterpiece. But it's not something that you should waste a lot of time writing about in your review.
Street Fighter 2 on the Amiga. We got to make sure we mention that. Yeah.
Also, there's always a big deal made of the fact that this is there are no quote unquote difficult special moves, which if you're into fighting games at all, you realize that is half of what make fighting games fun. Nobody's playing fighting games because they're simple. If you want to play something simple, play a beat 'em up, play Streets of Rage or whatever.
Yes.
That is not a mark in the favor of this game. Essentially what they're saying is it doesn't matter that you only have one button. That's when you read between the lines, that's what they're saying. Another thing they always mention is, hey, this is the OCS ECS version. Just wait till the CD32's coming around the corner. Well, as we all know, that didn't materialize. So this is it's all about building hype. It's all about, reaffirming to these teenage boys that will read in these magazines that the thing that you bought is still relevant. Don't listen to your friends. What you have is really gold.
This is like, remember we'd read those articles where it'd be like, listen, and this is a knock against a pretty good game, but it'd be like, listen, who needs Sonic? You got Super Frog. Well,
right.
No, you don't.
In fact, the cover of the One, from, I believe this was like February of '94. The cover is the chick Jacinda or whatever from Elfmania. She's standing there. And then the headline is "Bog Off, Chun Li."
Yeah.
So there you go.
It's ludicrous. That statement is insane. And you're right. It's 94, and they're like, oh man. I mean, this probably looked like the Oasis in the desert. And you can imagine what Fighting Spirits looked like in '96. They probably were like, I didn't. It's funny, I didn't.
But I mean, that was a passion project.
Well, also that game was. You had 2 more years, and it still was it up to its contemporaries. God no, but it was an actual quality. It's the best fighting game on the Amiga.
Oh yeah, by
far. This was a game, and I will say something else that bothers me about reviews for games like this. Hey, listen, whenever we do like a point and click game, people are well aware of my shortcomings in that department. Okay, and so I try to try to look at these things with a grain of salt, and I tell people, listen, I'm not real skilled. The same should be said for people that don't know much about fighting games, because you could tell by these reviews that the people that reviewed these have never played anything off the Amiga that was a fighting game. It's all the same tripe every time when you read these. I read a bunch of these reviews because, much like yourself, I was baffled at these scores. And at the end of the day, I think you nailed it pretty well when it comes to why they devised these scores. Did we get any? I'd be interested to hear if we got any Discord action on this, Boater.
We sure did. Our first review comes from Alien Breeder. He says, Elfmania, brother. This is a really
Yes.
interesting. Yeah. This is a really interesting program. It is really more of a tech demo than a playable game. And so, of course, I bought it when it came out. It's interesting. He's in the US, so this thing did get an NTSC release. Some of the graphics on the levels are stunning, with multiple layers of, in the foreground and the background, animated backgrounds, water, line scrolling, but then the fights begin. Unfortunately, the characters, for the most part, are boring and weird, with 7 being the only one I really liked. Regardless, the gameplay is pretty basic and somewhat tough to control. While playing the game isn't a great experience, looking at the backgrounds like the waterfall scene, Middle Eastern city, the shipyard, and the snowy village are impressive, almost to the point of distraction. The fact that this could be done on an ECS OCS machine when no one can do it in Street Fighter II anywhere near this quality is very frustrating. Overall, this gets 820 top bananas out of 1,000, with 800 of them being for the graphics and animation.
I will say, wait, just let me hop in for a split second.
Yeah, man.
You're right. He's right. It's a shame that they could not pull off Street Fighter, but there is a flip side of that. When you've got only a few moves to animate and no jumping animation, think of the amount of extra frames and animation and graphics you have to put into a Street Fighter to have anything that resembled an actual Street Fighter game. And so,
That's true.
You wouldn't be getting it on 2 discs, and because of all extra artwork it would take. So there's a backside of that where they just didn't. It's easier. This is the kind of game that would be easier to animate. Go ahead, bud.
Yeah. And we got one more from Pajako 6502. He says, proof that the Amiga can handle a fighting game with lots of sprites, sound effects, and freaking music all at the same time and run well. Sadly, the gameplay totally drops the ball on this one. There's a couple of nice things that make it sound out from the slew of Street Fighter II clones, like the tic-tac-toe map system and the bizarre coin system, which is pretty good when you get your head around it. The general fighting is okay for a one-button game, but the jumping is way too floaty, and you often end up landing just the other side of opponents facing the wrong direction. The special quote-unquote move is slow to pull off, and opponents have plenty of time to see it coming and jump over you. Or if you're playing with a friend, they're going to hear that joystick a-waggling and know it's coming. Characters feel imbalanced, and some matches just end up being over very quickly because you get pummeled by bigger fighters if you're trying to use a smaller character. You can cheese it in some rounds by hanging on the edge of the screen, just kicking coins at your opponents, but you can also disappear off screen, which can make for a confusing time. We didn't talk about that, Aaron.
Yeah, you're right.
In this game, one or both of the characters can disappear off the sides of the screen at any time.
24 cents. 24 cents, but my bad.
And he says, and really, just make all the characters available to start with. And finally, sitting through your opponent, hoovering up all the prizes and coins when the game is over is not a fun time. Great looking and sounding. Shame about the gameplay. 5 out of 10 from Pajako.
And just to close this up, I do want to mention a couple more things. One, this game does feature 2-player play. Obviously, it's a fighting game, and in 2-player mode, you've got access to the full roster of characters. So there's that. And 2, and I'm gonna. This is sort of the disclaimer I'm gonna add to all the abuse I've caked on this game. This is an Amiga game by a first-time developer coming out of Finland, where there really was no backbone for this industry, and they made this game for a machine that was quickly dying, and they also had trouble getting this game out. Okay. Everything I just said tells me that they got as much as they could into this game before they shoved it out the door, because they'd already missed Christmas and they were slowly missing the whole computer in the process mode. And so I'm going to give them a pass, because this was, if I'm a fan and it's 1994, and I see this game, and I don't like the game, but it gives me hope that you've got to. I mean, you someone over at that place knows how to do something, because it's the mechanics of the non-playing parts of it are great. So there's certainly hope for the future, because clearly there's some talented people that work there. And so when you look at it that way,
well, here's the way that I see it. Take a look at Street Fighter 1. Street Fighter 1 did a lot of things that were great, but it also left a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
If the Amiga had been given a couple more years, or if these guys had started on the Genesis instead of the Amiga, and they had some runway to work with in terms of the console longevity, Elfmania 2 had every chance of really being something really great.
Yeah, and I will say, they had, get this, Boat, they had a data disc plan for this thing. The data disc was going to add several fighters and some backgrounds. I've seen some of the pictures of the fighters and the backgrounds. They look good. And so they had a data disc is an interesting play, because it's, at the time, that sort of was the dream, to be able to add fighters, continuously. And so there may have been, if this game had been released a few years earlier, there may have been a market for data discs. And I think in the fighting game community, that would have done real well in the Amiga, because you always want more guys. Of course, on the flip side, you're going to be swapping discs a lot more.
You're swapping discs more.
But still, I mean, so I'm going to, it's like anything we look at on this show. We may kill a game, even something like Top Banana, which we've killed repeatedly. But you never know the pressures of what's going on in the background in terms of the allotment of manpower, the allotment of time that they've got, and how much money they're getting, and what they're willing to invest of themselves in, given what they're being paid. And I think this game, I would not be surprised if you were to talk to the people that developed the game. I bet there'd be a lot of stories about how this is not exactly what they had in mind, but they probably had to get it out the door.
Not to mention just the pressures of living in Finland.
Well, hey, we know people in Finland. They like it. I've got a eBay here, so you might. And by the way, I had a bid in for one of these. Ironic, because this fits this would go well into my dirt games. eBay has these up in complete box, Boat, so you can take your pick. $261, $182, $163, Boat, and the one that I put a bid on in for France, the Big F, $49. I made an offer. They turned down because I'm not paying that. Now get this: you think to yourself, "Oh, these guys are crazy." The way that they're asking for money for this. One of these sold for $53, and one of them sold for $137.
Wow!
So someone is paying the money for Elfmania, and the box. I will say the box is in the same art style as the characters, and so is the manual. So it's a real looker.
Although it must be mentioned, and somebody brought this up in the chat, that on the box, Jacinda, or whatever the chick's name is, she has an eye patch on the box that's curiously missing from the game. So I don't know if there was. Yeah,
she got better, Boat.
Don't know what's up with that.
Listen, when you play this game, I would suggest wearing 2 eye patches.
Welcome to Retro Rewind. I'm your host, British Jones. Whether you're into the Amiga, Commodore 64, or Tiger floral print speed suits, Retro Rewind has all you need from the friendly hosers of the Great White North. Looking to upgrade your Amiga? Check out the Amiga OS 3.2.2 Kickstart ROM for just $18. Or maybe you need a C64 or C128 diagnostic harness. Grab one while they're hot. Don't miss our best sellers like the 1541 Transit Card for just $1, or the incredible Amiga Coin Cell Battery Adapter. Shop now at Retro Rewind Limited and bring your classic computers back to life. Retro Rewind Limited. Frank's the man.
Amiga News.
Campbell Train.
All right, Aaron, we're back with this week's Amiga News. Speaking of being back, Aaron, one of our best buddies in the scene, Neil from RMC, is back.
Yeah.
From his well-deserved paternity leave, and he's come out swinging with some content about the Amiga and the Amiga arcade system.
Yes, sir.
Now, this was one that I'd never heard about before. Most of the time when you hear about these arcade machines with Amiga games, this is right up there with the Babylon 5 special effects. When you get your Amiga apologists, they're like, Mad Dog McCree had an Amiga in it. bam, and then they do the X-Pac thing several times.
They tell you to suck it, and they run away.
Yeah, exactly. So this is different though. This is Mastertronics, who I always think about as a Spectrum developer.
Yeah,
they had those. I think they were the ones that had that kind of grid box design. I could be wrong about that, but I think I'm right. They decided that they were going to get into the arcade scene, which is sort of unusual for a British company. Most of the time they didn't head that way, and they said, well, and since we're going to do this, we're going to do it in America. And so they went to they had an office opened in America. I think they were called Bulldog or something like that.
Yeah.
And they decided to launch this arcade platform. Now it is Mastertronic. They did have the grid on the boxes. They decided to launch this arcade platform based around the Commodore Amiga. It was called the Advanced Arcade System. And it's funny, Aaron, because this was during the time that they had the Intel Inside logo, and they really missed a trick because they could have been like, yeah, Amiga, it's in the ass.
Yeah, that would probably not get over.
I don't know. I would have gone with it.
Yeah, that's why you're not running a company.
So Neil has found one of these things, and there's a listener sent him this thing from America. It came in various pieces. This is it has a control panel and then the various inner workings of the board and everything. And so Neil's doing what he does best, the old trash to treasure with the murder gloves. And he is taking this thing apart. And really, this first episode is just an overview of the components of this system, how it might have worked, and just kind of a general history. He's really going to dive deeper in future episodes. Aaron, did you give this thing a watch?
Oh yeah, of course. I watched it straight away. And the funny thing about this system is, what's in this thing is a bunch of daughter boards connected to a proper Amiga 500 board. It's an Amiga 500 board in there, and then they've got everything rigged up to all the serial, all the ports in the back are rigged up to go to the monitor. And it's funny when you look at this arcade machine. It's it's not what I would call an attractive looking machine. Frankly, it's a kind of dopey look. Look at that thing, Bo.
This thing. Do you remember what year this was supposed to have made its triumphant debut?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but
late 80s or early 90s, something like that. This is really when arcade machines had really gone the JAMA route. They were starting to go where they really all started looking the same kind of generic. And so this probably would have fit in. It definitely wouldn't have attracted any lookers, though. That's for sure.
Oh, if you listen to the games that he named out that he had, they're old Amiga games.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it this way. I don't know if you listen, but the big one he named out was Leaderboard Golf. Not even world-class leaderboard. It also has stuff like darts. There was a game called Ninja. I think Sidewinder might have been one of them. So, these are some, these weren't even what I would call big-time Amiga games.
Yeah.
I guess these are what they had. I don't know if Mastertronic had published these or purchased the rights to distribute them or whatever kind of deal they'd worked out. Look at this big button here. And we're looking at this picture of this thing. If you're listening at home, it's got a speaker grill in the marquee area. It looks, I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Now, even though this thing was manufactured, and I guess the test system came from somewhere in Canada, all of the documentation that he found comes from the UK. This thing was written about in the UK because obviously the Amiga was something other than a non-factor in the UK. And so people were writing about it from that standpoint. It is kind of funny, though, that a system produced in Silicon Valley for sale in the United States and Canada, you couldn't find any sort of documentation, trade mag write-ups, or anything like that.
I will say, being an American, as I am, and a frequent of arcades back in this era, and I'm thinking, so we're looking at the article here for Leaderboard Golf, being able to be played in this thing, came out in 88. So let's place this thing around 90 when it gets released, 89, 90, okay? So when this comes out, if I went to the arcade at 90 and someone was playing Leaderboard Golf, I'd laugh and then I'd walk away. And if they were playing darts, I'd be like, what? Now, they say this was for the back of bars and pizza. It was not like an arcade, but listen, the play choice machines we used to see all the time with the red tents, even even those, I was sort of, I mean, they were okay. I sort of mocked them because they're not arcade games, and you knew they weren't. And these games, these aren't even NES level games. Like these are, I mean, these are low end games. So I don't know how this I don't know how this series is going to end.
Well, I know that
predict a huge failure for Astrotronic.
Yeah. Obviously, the story is not going to end well. To me, it seems like if you take that angle, then you've got to be like, okay, what are we going to be offering the operators here? Well, we're offering them a machine that is probably not going to cost them as much money up front, and we're offering them some modularity. Just like the PlayChoice 10, just like the Neo Geo, you can take these carts and you can unplug them and plug them in and give you that. That's what you're offering the operators. But what are you offering the game playing public?
Yeah.
Because this is not at the time yet.
Is it a dime?
Well, I was going to say, this is not at the time yet where video games had gone to 50 cents. Except for Dragon's Lair and maybe some other outliers, most games were still 25 cents. And you can't really make machines cheaper than that in the United States because all the coin mechs are set up to work with quarters. So I will be interested to watch the rest of this thing to see how the story unfolds.
Like, here, we're looking at it. Here's the thing that tells you the game's available. Listen to these titles. If you're listening at home, basketball, golf, Sidewinder, Ninja Mission, and I like underneath it says in parentheses martial arts. Underneath
people
Sidewinder,
don't know what ninjas are. The operators, they have no idea.
Under Sidewinder it says space. Under Xenon it says shooting. Then it's got darts, table hockey, blast-a-ball. Where's the parentheses for blast-a-ball? 10-pin bowling, road wars, that's shooting and driving, and Space Ranger. These are the games these are the many incredible games.
They sound like launch titles for the Atari 2600. Yeah, that's what they sound like.
And so you're right. I'm thinking about, and by the way, just to get into it, keep in mind, like, this would not have even been close to a new thing in 1989. I mean, even like the Deco system, that stuff like I think like Burger Time
ran on
and
it,
maybe like Bump and Jump. They ran on that system that was a tape-based system. And by this time, I'm trying to think what year the Neo Geo started putting those things, but it wasn't too far removed from this. So you also had, there were multiple people that had this sort of gimmick. The JAMA system was around in 90, I believe. Yeah. So you could have, that was in 88. I know it was because WWF Superstars was JAMA and it was in 88. So you were fighting an uphill battle here. But again, if they were selling these to like pub owners or something to sit in the back of the pub, like a fruit machine, and they made you a real sweet deal, and the games are double cheap, then you might have something there. But
so I would love to see, and I know that he put out the call for any American magazines that people, if they have American trade magazines, that would give you pricing and things like that, because that would be really interesting to know.
It's a invocative. It's a real think piece to think about this thing as Neil looks at it. And I will say, having not seen one of these, I'd heard of them, but I've not seen them. I'm anxious to see like the end result of it, because they're going to manufacture a machine and stuff, do all the crazy stuff that only Neil has the resources to pull off. And so by the end of this series, we're going to see this machine, and we're going to see people playing it, and then that's when the rubber meets the road, Boat.
All right, Aaron. So we look forward to that, but we move on with some gaming news, Aaron. This one is ecliptic. Ecliptic is the word.
You got there.
That is. Thank you. This is a new game that's coming up, and this is sort of an interesting take on a couple different genres. If you look at this thing, it looks a lot like a sort of an XCOM-y game, or the game that came before XCOM. I can't think of what it's called. But it's a turn-based strategy combined, according to the description, with role-playing elements. Aaron, role-playing elements. The author says that it's a mixture of Space Crusade, UFO Enemy Unknown, and the Gold Box D&D games.
Man, so he's really setting it up there, isn't he?
This is it's still in development. This is it's a PAL only, of course. And it says that it runs best with an A1200 with a hard drive and fast RAM. So I think this looks kind of cool. There's a lot of icons on the screen there. I'm not crazy about that, but I think that the game is bright and colorful, which I personally enjoy. And if you're into the kind of XCOM type combat system, this may be one to keep an eye on.
Listen, I like this interface he's got going here because take a good hard look at this. If you're listening at home, he's got a pop-up screen at the bottom that has a whole flurry of different things, but they're corresponding with keys on your keyboard, and they're labeled. So
I see that now.
You see what's got going on there. So
that
for
is
example,
cool.
If you want to use the wrench, you'd be hitting the U button, and if you want to look forward, it's the L button. That's very clever.
Yeah,
I don't think I've seen that before, Bo.
Me
it's like
neither.
a built-in overlay.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
That's not bad. And how much do we complain about not being able to know what we're doing or see what's happening? This is nice. I think that, having not knowing anything about the game, I think that's a very clever innovation. I don't know if I've seen that before. So this looks like something that's quite involved as well. So we'll have to keep on the lookout for this. It looks like it's going to require OS 3.1, a mega memory, and an Amiga 1200 with a hard drive, and fast RAM is ideal. So not too crazy in terms of the specs on that. Might be good, Bode.
Yeah. Coming up next, Aaron, this is another entry for the 2024 Amiga Game Jam. If you recall from previous weeks, the theme from this show is the sequel that never was. And this game is called Amy Robo 2. This originally was found on a machine that's near and dear to both of our hearts, the Atari XL XE series of personal computers.
Yeah, man.
And has been redone and reconfigured for the Commodore Amiga. This looks like a Sokoban type puzzle game, but it does include a lot of unique things. Keys. There's I was watching some footage of this earlier where you actually get onto a spaceship and you travel around. There's teleports. It's a lot more involved than Sokoban, but it's that same sort of like block pushing mechanic is involved.
Yeah.
Plus there's some dexterity involved in maneuvering your character through these levels, kind of a gauntlet-ishy type of thing with keys. So it's more of like a puzzly gauntlet is I guess what I would call it.
I like how he's spelled out some stuff in the level blocks. He just had Atari spelled out. Now he's got Amy Game Jam spelled out in the blocks.
Yeah, I love that.
Good angle, dude. Get yourself over, kid. I like it. Might be fun. We've played a few of these games over the years, Boater. And this looks like a modern take on the subject. It might be pretty good. Anything that's ported over the Atari, I like the idea.
Yeah,
so
Tukanem is the author. So check that out. All of these game links are off of Indie Retro News, which is the site to go to figure out what's new and upcoming in the game scene for the Amiga.
You get that.
Finally, Aaron, we've got a game called The Tower of Evil.
Oh,
and
man.
Guess what? It's another entry for the Amiga Game Jam in 2024. This thing is taking off like a rocket.
When is that thing? How long do they have to get this stuff in? Is it?
I think it's something like August.
Yeah,
something
they got like 8 months or something. Right?
Yeah.
So we're getting the early goodies from this. That's dandy.
Yeah, Cammy, I think, is in the chat. She can tell me if I'm wrong. So anyway, this is Tower of Evil.
Ooh,
this was originally a Commodore 16 plus 4 ZX Spectrum and VIC-20 game. So, if you had one of those relatively low-end machines, no offense to lovers of those platforms, but they were no Amiga, and you have fond memories of playing the original. This looks very, it almost kind of has a like a Seamus vibe to it is what I'm getting. Seamus meets adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with the Ventures. It's like,
Venture,
sort of
absolutely.
Like Berserk or so. It's one of those run around and shoot stuff, which that's okay with me. And your guy looks like Carrot Top. Added bonus.
So anyway, the Tower of Evil. Make sure you check that out. And I'm sure that there's going to be some more Amiga Game Jam entries coming as we move through the weeks and months ahead.
And this is one of the reasons I like 8-bit stuff. Okay. Sometimes, games have gotten very advanced. We just looked at a couple games that were really advanced. But sometimes the simple ways are so gratifying. Sometimes I don't want to memorize a bunch of crap. I just want to look like a goof and run through a maze and shoot crap. That's what I want.
That's right.
And this game is the shoot crap game. That's what I'm talking about.
Your player, I'll tell you exactly who it reminds me of, is the dude in Food Fight. That's exactly who this reminds me of.
Hopefully he's not as big a jerk as that kid. But what is this called again, Boat? Let's get this thing over.
Tower of Evil.
I like it, Boat. I think that could be another winner. This is already shaping up nicely. So the Game Jam's always a hoot. So it should be good.
Yeah, man. And that's going to wrap it up for this week's Amiga News, Aaron. What do we have coming up next on the show?
Let's find out, Boater. Brace yourself, Boater. It's Carrier Command. We have, me and Boat have had a cup of coffee with the Command, I believe, on the ZX. In fact, I think it was quite a famous episode of the ZX, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong there, but I think that was the one. But famously, I mentioned that, and Boat reminded me of this before the show, that the ZXS may have been a little bit outside of its abilities. So now, here we are with the Amiga, which should be more than enough to take care of this thing. Now the problem is going to be is that outside of our abilities, but because me and Boat are particularly stupid when it comes to these games. I did retain a little bit of this, but it's time to print those docs out again, Boat, to get into this thing.
This is going to be. I'm going to start. The docs are printing as we speak on this one.
Hey,
guys.
I want to one thing, Boat, before we call it tonight. If you haven't caught it, we're in October. This is the return of Conversations with the Dark Side. I told you I'd forget, Boat. So if you're into that sort of thing, myself, Rob Flacco here, and occasionally the Boater himself, although Boat's renowned not into horror all that much, but every once in a while he steps. Scared. Every once in a while, Boat works the dark side of the street with us.
That's true.
But myself and Jack Flack, Rob Flack O'Hara from his mini podcast, including You Don't Know Flack and Sprite Castle, he's going to join me for the rest of the month on Friday nights as we get back into Conversations from the Dark Side. Last week, we did a show dedicated to vampires, but tonight I'm very excited because Flack had a great idea. We're going to do the dark side of crime. We're going to talk about nefarious and notorious crimes that took place that have a dark flavoring to them that are a little outside the unusual. So that will be on tap for Friday night. If you're interested, come check us out. Conversations from the Dark Side.
I think it's only fair after next week, to do your favorite light crimes episode.
Those are crimes where, like, someone gets killed, but the guy that killed was dressed like a clown, or he's an elf, big doe-eyed idiot. I'd rather be killed on the dark side, Boat.
That's true. That's true. When you put it like that. Guys, as always, if you want to support the show, patreon.com/Amigos podcast. We will see you next week. And until then, adios.
Adios.
Amigos is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play, receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Visit patreon.com/Amigos podcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.